Howdy. This is the Views from the Shop podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller, and today it is Friday the 13th, December 13th, 2024, and I wish you a very, very, very happy Pick a Pathologist Pal Day. Today's show is, of course, exclusively presented by College Basketball Analytics. Go to cbbanalytics.com. You can sign up for a free account, or you can sign up for a paid account, get access to all the stats, analytics, advanced information that several Division I college basketball programs use to scout, self-scout, and game plan. Use the code SHOTT, that's SCHOTT, to get an entire month free. And they wouldn't tell me to tell you this, but I will say it anyway. It can be a bit of a source for some sports betting, should you choose to do that, especially if you're in a state with player props. So go check it out. So Ohio State has its biggest game of the season coming up tomorrow against Auburn. I would say, actually, it's going to be the biggest game of the non-conference slate. I still personally would say the biggest game of the season is going to be that game when Michigan comes to the Shot. I think like the day or two after Valentine's Day, something like that, but there will be no love lost in that one. Of course, Auburn, one of the best teams in the entire nation. And coming into the season, we expected this to be the most difficult game on Ohio State's schedule, and it's shaping up to be that way. So on today's show, we're going to break down the entire Auburn versus Ohio State game. We'll talk about Auburn's offense, Auburn's defense. We'll get into some banger bets. We'll get predictions and a pick before we get out of here as well. But before we do that, I have a humble request, okay? So this is going to be off topic. This doesn't really have to do with Ohio State basketball necessarily, but it does have to do with the show, and I need your help, okay? So often I say things on this podcast, and I will tweet things on the Views from the Shot X account, of course. That just helps me cover Ohio State basketball, and, well, sometimes I give my opinions on things, and I'm not here to rehash this opinion. So when I bring this up, if you're tired of me talking about it, I'm not going to talk about it again here, but I'm going to give you some background. So last weekend, a tweet was published by the Nut House on Twitter about Devin Royal dating some celebrity, obviously not real, obviously brain rot. And me personally, after having just been to a game, maybe a week prior, where I was very, very unimpressed. Like, the most underwhelmed I've ever been by the Nut House happened in this game, and I was kind of sick of it. I'm sick of the atmosphere in the Shot, which isn't completely the Nut House's fault, but they are at blame for some of what's going on there within the Schottenstein Center. So I said, hey, maybe first let's worry about bringing some energy to the Shot, and then we can move on to brain rot. I wasn't trying to be mean, just kind of poking some fun. They took it personally, and that's fine. So I come to find out they took this extremely, extremely personally. So I keep an eye on the numbers here at the Views from the Shop podcast, okay? I look at subscribers, I look at listeners, I look at where across the United States and otherwise people are listening to the show. We get listens pretty consistently from Canada. So whoever that Buckeye fan is, or multiple of you in Canada listening to the show, I shout you out. All that to say, we have probably never gotten more than like 3 or 4 reviews on any platform in a week. And then this week we got about 15. And this was a show that was consistently running about 4.7 stars on Spotify specifically. And all of a sudden this week I look and we're down to 3.0 stars. So what happened? Well, we got an influx of reviews, and all of them mathematically had to be 1-star reviews in order for the entire rating to go down all the way to 3 stars. From 4.7 plummeting down to 3, it requires a bunch of 1-star reviews. So what I believed happened is this. I believe the Nut House in like their paint session or whatever it's called before a game, which was last Saturday's game, they probably said, whoever runs the Twitter account and also is like the leader of the Nut House this year, whatever that may be, said, hey guys, pull up your phones, get on Spotify, and give this guy a 1-star review because he said something negative about us. That's fine. You're college kids, whatever. Do what you've got to do. I ask for 5-star reviews for many reasons. One reason in particular is because it actually does affect me in some ways. Okay. And I will just leave it at that. So here's what I'm going to do. Because people who have never listened to the show decided, because they got angry about an opinion, they were just going to flood my podcast, which I pour a lot of time and effort and energy into because I care about Ohio State basketball and I think it deserves more coverage. And now at this point, I care about this because I have a lot of people reaching out to me on Twitter every single week just talking about Ohio State basketball, which I love. I care about the community that has been built up here. And the fact that there are some people who are upset about an opinion and have decided to let that be more important than any consequences that could come after it, I need to ask for help from you. I have had conversations in the past in regards to sponsorships where I must maintain a certain rating in order to keep the sponsorship because that sponsor, and this isn't CBB Analytics, this is previous conversations and something that will come up in the future as well. If we decide to work together, the rating of the show must remain at a certain number because they don't want their brand associated with a podcast that is seen negatively, which is completely understandable. And now I've had people spam 1-star reviews on this show, and it hurts me in the show. It also hurts me like personally. Like I care about this. I put a lot into this. Okay. I'm not asking, like, I'm not guilt tripping you or asking you to feel sorry for me. I choose to do it. I signed up for it, but I put a lot of work into this. I'm proud of the fact that I have made connections with players and staff members and coaches and other people in and outside the program. I'm proud of that, and I want to bring you a fantastic product. So, all that to say, if this show has affected you in any way that is not completely horrible, I need to ask you to give a 5-star review on Spotify if you haven't already. I know most people listen to the show on Apple Podcasts. Another reason why I know the Nut House flooded this show with 1-star reviews. I don't want this drama. Like I didn't tweet that just for drama. I was just trying to have some fun. I'm sorry. Didn't work out for the Nut House apparently. If you've already given a 5-star review, thank you for that on Spotify. If you haven't done it on Spotify yet and you've done an Apple Podcast, please, if you have a Spotify account, give a 5-star review. If you're listening on Spotify, you haven't given a 5-star review yet, please do. Here's what's in it for you. If you screenshot the fact that you've given a 5-star review to the Views from the Shop podcast on Spotify and you DM it to me, I will enter you in the drawing. I'm going to give away 2 Raising Cane's gift cards at a value of $25. Raising Cane's is my favorite restaurant. I want to spread that love to you. It is the season of giving. So if you can help me out with that, I will enter you into the drawing. Your chances of winning are doubled because there's 2 gift cards to give away. Please help out the show. Please ask friends to help out the show at this point. If you actually listen to the show and you give a 5-star review because I asked you to and maybe incentivize you to, I don't feel that bad about it because some like 21-year-old kids are mad about an opinion and they decided, hey, we're in a meeting. We're all going to go on Spotify and give a 1-star review. So that kind of pissed me off, but it is what it is. And I hate to start the show that way, but that's kind of what has to happen. So please help me out if you're not opposed to doing it. All right. Let's do what we actually want to do, and let's talk about Ohio State basketball. Let this be the final time I talk about the Nut House. Goodness, this has gotten way just so out of hand. Like, just take a joke. Okay, so Ohio State's going to take on Auburn. That's going to take place at, is this a noon tip-off? I believe it's a noon tip-off on ESPN, and so it's going to be like that, huh? I don't have anything up that's going to tell me what time this game is. I'm going to find something quickly, and this is a 1 o'clock Eastern tip-off on ESPN2 in Atlanta, Georgia, State Farm Arena. It's a neutral site game. It's not a neutral site game. It's a home game for Auburn, might as well be. But with basketball, you never know. You can really tell the venue or the programs, whoever's responsible for selling most of these tickets, they have trouble selling tickets. Did you see the Ohio State-Texas game? I mean, there are tournaments where you're playing in a high school gym. Literally, like there's the stage where you have your little junior high concert, you can see that up on the floor where teams will play sometimes and there's still no one there. That was like the Wisconsin Pitt game that I watched a couple weeks ago before Ohio State played Pitt. Like, we still can't sell it out. We still got empty seats. And it's like 1,000 people capacity. So it probably won't be the loudest of environments. Even if it is a home game for Auburn, it probably won't really matter. And I don't think that's a good thing. I have the opinion that if you're a competitor and you've made it to the highest level in college basketball, you probably would prefer to get booed by, in basketball case, like 10,000 people than there be like 2,000 people there and it's dead. Because that at least gives you some energy. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. But Ohio State will take on Auburn 1 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to cover the entire game now. My opinion is that Auburn is the best team in college basketball. I'm kicking myself for not picking them to go to the Final Four. I picked Baylor, Kansas, Marquette, Duke, I believe. Why didn't I throw Auburn in there? Hindsight is 2020, I guess. I just feel like I overlooked them or something happened. I don't know. But they're the number 1 team in Ken Palm. They're the number 2 team in Bart Torvik. Where are they in the AP poll? I don't know. That's how much I care about the AP poll. I don't even know where they're ranked. Let's figure this out, because if they're like the number 1 team in the AP, that's probably a problem for me. Basketball AP poll. Let's see what the Google machine comes up with. The link is already up. And Auburn is, yeah, I knew Tennessee was 1. So they're number 2. Auburn is number 2 in the nation in the AP. So this is a big time matchup, obviously, for Ohio State. Auburn right now sits at 8-1. And they have some very, very serious wins on their resume already. They beat Houston. That's the only team ahead of them in Bart Torvik. By the way, they beat Houston. They beat Iowa State, who I think is a really, really good team this year. They beat North Carolina. Are they good? It's hard to say. Still a blue blood. They beat Memphis. Memphis has some good wins this year. And then they finally took their first loss of the season just this week. Last week that was. Against Duke. Isaiah Evans just took over in that one. That was one of the best games of the year in college basketball. If you didn't see that game and you'd like to know more about Auburn, or you just want something fun to do, maybe while you listen to the show, pull up some highlights from the Duke and Auburn game. That was a good one. So Auburn has some big wins on its resume. The stats are insane. They're absolutely wild. So they're averaging 87 points per game. That's 10th in the nation of all of college basketball right now. They're 129.5 in offensive rating. That's first in the NCAA. They're shooting 51% from the field as an entire team. 51% from the field. That's 6th in the nation, and they're a really good three-point shooting team, just shy of 38% right now. You look up and down their overview page on college basketball analytics, and you just see green, and like dark green, because they're 99th percentile, 100th percentile, 92nd percentile, all up and down the list for Auburn. It's a very good team overall, especially offensively, and their adjusted offensive efficiency, by the way, is also number 1 in college basketball. So however you look at it, you could look at the traditional scoring stats, you can look at the traditional shooting stats, you can look at more analytical numbers that are kind of rating you on a per possession basis, and you can even look at it based adjusting on who you're playing. Auburn still very, very good offensively. They also have, they're basically the highest scoring team every single time they go out to play compared to all the other opponents that their opponent has played. Let me explain this a little bit easier. So against Houston, they scored 74 points. 74 points isn't a lot. Against Houston, it is. That 74 points is the most Houston has allowed in a 40-minute game this season. They've allowed more points in games that went to overtime, but in games that were only 40 minutes long, ended in regulation. That's the most points that they've allowed this season, and it was against Auburn. 83 points did Auburn score against Iowa State. That is the second most, other than Dayton's 84. So only 1 point difference. Auburn scoring the second most points in a game that Iowa State has allowed this year. And in that game, by the way, Iowa State and Houston, that was a pretty fun one too. Dayton, 84 points. Zed Key had 15 points. He had 4 rebounds and 6 of 7 from the field. So good job, old friend Zed Key. North Carolina, are they good? These numbers would probably say not. North Carolina has given up a lot of points to a lot of different teams this year. Auburn, no different. 90 points scored by Auburn against Memphis. That is by far the most that Memphis has allowed in regulation this season, and 78 points in a game against Duke. That is, again, the most points allowed by Duke this season. So you go up and down this schedule that Auburn has playing real-life basketball teams. I mean, Ohio State has taken on Texas and Texas A&M and Pitt and Maryland, Rutgers. Those are good teams. Auburn is playing like the elite teams. I don't think anyone's going to have a stronger strength of schedule than Purdue this season. Auburn will probably end up being number 2 and maybe number 1 because of how good the SEC is. Non-conference wise, I think Purdue's going to be number 1. Auburn most likely going to be number 2. They played some very, very good teams and they played well. And you continue with their offense. They've scored 100 or more points in a game once this year, just like Ohio State. They just like us for real, for real. They've scored 90 points in a game 4 times. That includes the one 100-point game, or I think they scored 102 in that one. And then they've scored 80 points or more in 5 of their last 6 games. So the Auburn Tigers, they score a lot. How do they do it? Number 1, they are as efficient as you could probably imagine within your human brain. They are as efficient as it gets offensively. So this is an SEC team. So you would imagine super athletic, they can jump out of the gym, but what it really comes down to is they're going to run up and down the floor. And that's not the case with Auburn. They're actually 41st percentile in pace this season. Now, Jake Diebler has said he wants to push the pace a little bit more. He also said Aaron Bradshaw back with the program. Haven't had the chance to talk about that yet. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. Auburn, not a fast team. They're slower. They're slashing as a team at 51, 38, and 75. The free throw number could be a little better. It's still pretty good. They've got a 59.5% assist rate this season. That's absolutely exceptional. And they're only averaging 9.1 turnovers per game and the number 1 assist to turnover ratio in college basketball as well. So it's just efficient across the board. They're not a fast team, but they make all their shots and they don't lose possessions, and that allows you to score a lot of points. So that's a huge part of how Auburn is so good. Of course, you've got Johni Broome, 20 points per game this season, 4 assists per game. He's averaging 12 rebounds per game this season as well. So those sheer numbers are good, but he's got a 29.6% usage rate. That is very, very, very high. Probably not quite number 1 in the nation, but pretty close to it, maybe number 1. And yet he's still shooting 57% from the field. So he's no Evan Mahaffey. He's no Devin Royal shooting above 60% from the field, but obviously he's shooting it very well. But you've got 6 total players on this team who are shooting 45% or higher from the field. You've got Chad Baker, Mazzara, Chaney Johnson, Miles Kelly transfers in, I think, from Georgia Tech. He's been really good. Tahad Pettiford, the freshman, I think he was a top 30-ish freshman this season, immediately came on and played well for Auburn. So you've got 6 players shooting above 45%. This is an extremely efficient team. We'll talk about how they make those shots here in just a second. But, I mean, this is also a team that is excellent. Excellent when it comes to making shots. They just have guys who can take and make shots from wherever it is on the floor. They're 80% from the field at the rim this season. That's 99th percentile. They take a high amount of threes, not a bunch, but a high amount, and they make them at 38%. 36.9% of their field goal attempts this year have come from the three-point line. That's pretty high. You've got Broome. You've got Baker Mazzara, sorry. He can hit from the mid-range. Pettiford, he can pour it in as well and hit from the mid-range. This is a team that even when things are breaking down, they've got guys who can score, and within structure, off-ball movement is excellent. They run a lot of 3-man action, which I think it puts the defense in a bind, but it also gives you multiple options. As the offensive player with the ball in your hands, do you keep it? Do you use your screen? Do you hit the guy who's rolling? Do you hit a guy who's slipping? Do you hit a guy on the backside? Bruce Pearl has done a great job at Auburn. He's done a great job in college basketball in general. He's won a lot of games at Auburn, and as you watch them, you definitely see why. It's a different offense from like a UConn, I would say, which really, really emphasizes movement at all times. But still, it's a good offense, and it's one that I think puts you in a bind more often than you would like to be in defensively. And then the last thing on Auburn's offensive rebounding, 35.6% offensive rebounding rate. They score 17 second chance points per game. That is third in the NCAA. And if you listen to the show a lot, you listen to these preview episodes and you hear me talk about teams. We have not had a team like this in terms of covering the opponents Ohio State has had this year. We've not talked about a team like this that is first, third, sixth in the NCAA. Maybe you're like top 20, top 15. Maybe you are number one in the nation at one thing. At a bunch of things like Auburn is, no. Ohio State hasn't seen that yet this season. Third in the NCAA in second gen scoring. The offensive rebounding, that comes from Broome, that comes from Johnson, that comes from Dylan Cardwell. I don't think I mentioned him yet as well. And then second chance scoring, of course, that will come from Broome. Baker, Mazzara, also scoring a lot, second chance points. Johnson, Pettiford, all those guys can score second chance as well. If you're looking for weaknesses for Auburn, you're just not really going to find it. They don't score a lot of fast break points, but they're still not as bad as Ohio State on the fast break. They're scoring less than 10 fast break points per game. That doesn't really matter when Ohio State refuses to push the ball, at least in the fast break. They cannot score in the fast break. I've talked about it on the show already, so I won't belabor the point. Ohio State needs to be better there. And this one, it looks like it won't be all that much of an issue, although it doesn't matter. Like, if you don't score a lot of fast break points, it doesn't matter if they do or don't. That it's just irrelevant. I've talked about that on the show as well, too. So you look for weaknesses on this team. You don't find one offensively. They're deep. They've got a lot of different guys who can score on this team. Obviously, they're led by Broome, but overall, plenty of players on this team can score. Now, defensively for Auburn, I think you look at the Duke game. The first loss of the year for Auburn came against Duke. I think it was a Tuesday night or Wednesday night game, something like that. And if you watch that game, it was a really good one. Two offenses that poured it in. On the flip side, though, Auburn's defense was absolutely horrible. So you allow 84 points, and it's not good, but it's not like you're giving up 90 plus or even 100 in 40 minutes. But their defensive rating was 135.4. That's absolutely awful. You cannot give up that many points per 100 possessions and ever expect to win a basketball game. They only had a 66.7% defensive rebounding rate as well. They had no splash plays. They had 20 personal fouls in this game. And this is where Ohio State needs to win. I think if you're Ohio State, you're okay with allowing this game to be a track meet. I think you need to push the tempo, but where you can win this game is on the defensive end. You don't think that Auburn is that good of a defensive team. You think they're a great offensive team. Maybe they're excellent in each scenario, but the one game they lost this year came on the defensive end, and that was against Duke. So it is a little bit different, but overall, they're still only allowing 67 points per game on the defensive end. They've got a 99.9 defensive rating. That's obviously very solid. 40% from the field allowed, and 32% of three-pointers attempted go in as well. So solid defensively. The numbers not elite like they are offensively, like top 5 in the nation, but they're still really good. They're not going to turn you over a lot. They don't force a lot of turnovers. That's only 10.7 turnovers forced per game. Still somehow leads to 15 points off of turnovers per game, which is pretty solid. But this defense is just so versatile. You look at Broome. He can guard on the three-point line. He was guarding Cooper Flagg on the three-point line against Duke. Denver Jones, he's 6'4", he's 205 pounds. If you get him back down against Bruce Thornton, that's maybe not a matchup that you're going to win all that much if you're Bruce Thornton, or as much as you're used to winning when you're in the paint on a guard, because Bruce Thornton can win that matchup all day, twice on Sunday, and hopefully twice on Saturday in this one. So that's Auburn as an offense. That's Auburn as a defense. I'd like to take my first sip of the show. I'm drinking out of a puppy mug with flowers. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that now. It's the last mug that was available to me. So what can you do? Alrighty. So we want to get into some predictions now for this one. No numbers out yet as of Friday morning for Auburn against Ohio State basketball playing on December 14th. No spread, no total, no money line, but I've got numbers that you can expect, and you can make moves should you choose to do so. So I think Auburn is going to be favored in this one by 9 points. That's my projection, okay? Based on the Views from the Shop podcast, betting intelligence platform, the BIP, we've got this game at Auburn -9. We would see the total at 154.5. If there's any leanings in this one, just so you know, Auburn is 7-2 against the spread this year. I'll give my own pick here in just a second. And then money line as well. I do like to give this for some games. When it comes to the price, like we can project probability of a team winning and things like that. When it comes to the price, if there's value, we would need Auburn to be at -400 or better. I think they're going to be a lot closer to -300 in this one, would be my guess. So there would be some value there, but do you want to lay $10 to win $3? Probably not. So, or however much you spend, far be it for me to ask you about your unit size. That's personal. But we would say Auburn needs to be -400 or better. Do you want to put money on Auburn to win at that value? Probably not. But if it's like -200 or better, maybe you do sprinkle. I don't know. Depends on your appetite. Ohio State is going to have to be +377-ish or better for there to be value. If you got a good feeling about Ohio State, you want something to root for, more than just Ohio State beating Auburn, you got $5 laying around, you could put that down. If you see Ohio State at like +380, you could do that. But we'll see if that'll be me. So when it comes to breaking down this game, those are the numbers, by the way. I give those numbers out before the numbers come out. So first of all, you can verify, as we have all year, that the BIP is actually on. And we've kind of struck gold here with knowing how Vegas is going to bring numbers out. That said, how do we project this game to go? So Auburn, they're versatile, they're athletic, they're skilled, they're pretty physical, and usually you have to pick one of those things as your identity in a season. Auburn has the luxury of basically being all of those things. You're really, really towing a line with Auburn when it comes to, is this really the only great team in college basketball right now? Kansas, no. Duke, I'm not sure if they're quite there. Houston, maybe. But there's a lot of teams that you expected to be really, really good this season in college basketball. You're really only seeing one that's consistently been there, and that has been Auburn and maybe Houston as well. But not a lot of teams. I guess you could throw a Tennessee in there as well. Like Duke has won a lot of games. Kansas has won a lot of games. They haven't looked exceptional in those games, in my opinion. Auburn is one of those teams that has looked exceptional in every single game, and it's because they're so versatile. Offensively, they've got guys who can score. Defensively, they just sit down, they slap the floor, and they shut you down, and they play high-quality basketball. There's not a lot of risk for turnovers and things like that. So the question for Ohio State, how do you win this game? Well, I've got other questions before that. And I felt my phone vibrating. No, not what I wanted. I've reached out to see if Aaron Bradshaw, I've reached out several times now, actually, to see if Aaron Bradshaw is going to play. My guess is they don't know, or the answer is no. But my personal guess would be, how would he not? Ohio State is so thin right now. Do you get Aaron Bradshaw back? The other thing you have to ask is, well, do you get Colin White back? Oh, and also, do you get Quez Glover back? Like, this team is as thin gets. We know Devin Royal is nicked up. We know Evan Mahaffey has been dealing with something as well. I don't know how public that has been. And then we also know that Sean Stewart already has I am assuming, a concussion as well this year. So guys have been beaten up. John Mobley Jr. left the game as well for Ohio State against, I think, Maryland when they got crushed. So everyone on this team has been banged up. It's not the most healthy of teams. So all that to say, it starts with Aaron Bradshaw. Do you get him back? He can help out a lot. The good thing with Auburn is it's not a traditional, I'm going to back you down, Big Ten type of team. So that's in favor of Ohio State's chances to win this game. But it starts with Aaron Bradshaw. Do you get him back? I think that he will play in this one. He might not start. He may get limited minutes. But I don't know how you can be as thin as you are as Jake Diebler at Ohio State. I get Bradshaw has been away from the program. I'm going to assume that the guy who's already skin and bones probably didn't put on like 15 pounds while he was away and just sat in his apartment and ate Cheez-Its. That's my guess. I could be wrong, but he's probably in okay enough shape. And I'm sorry, like most people probably could go play 15 minutes of a basketball game if needed. Like I'm an okay athleticism type of human being. I could go do that if I hadn't run for a month. I could go play 15 minutes of basketball. This is different because Aaron Bradshaw is going to play against the most athletic humans in the world, against Auburn, or like what, top 5 percentile of athletes in the world, maybe top 1 percentile. This is going off the rails. Shut up and get back on topic is what I would say to myself if I were listening right now. Yeah, I would say Aaron Bradshaw should be able to play, even if he's not taking on a full workload, even if he's not starting. I think he'll be able to play in this one. I think Ohio State will play him. That's my guess. I don't have any info on that. That would be my assumption. So if you get him back, you feel better about your chances. You feel better about the length he brings against Janai Mobley. That was close to Junie Mobley. Janai Broome, you feel better about that. You feel better about his ability to defend and to rebound for Ohio State. Hopefully he doesn't get in foul trouble. If he does play, if he has limited minutes, hey, go hack away. Go be aggressive, Aaron Bradshaw. Auburn, by the way, not a team that gets to the free throw line all that much. They don't draw a lot of fouls. So I think you look at Aaron Bradshaw. I also think you look at John Mobley Jr. John Mobley Jr. did not play a lot in Ohio State's win over Rutgers last Saturday. And now you're going into a game where you're going to need someone to step up. And kind of similar to John Mobley Jr. against Texas, where he kind of burst onto the scene. Can you get 14 points out of him? Can you get him to make 4 3-pointers in this one? That's going to go a long way for Ohio State. So I think you look at John Mobley Jr. and then Bruce Thornton. Bruce Thornton in big games has been sometimes great, sometimes not so much. And he gets to go back to Georgia. He gets maybe his last opportunity to play in the state of Georgia, unless Ohio State plays there for some reason for an NCAA tournament game. Maybe the Buckeyes return there next year and Bruce Thornton is still in Ohio State. Maybe he's in the NBA. I don't know. But this is going to be a game that means something, I'm sure, to Bruce Thornton. So you hope to get something out of him. Overall, I just think Auburn is the best team in college basketball. And I think you look at the blue chip ratio for Auburn. Even if a lot of these guys are transfers, they came in as 4 5-star transfer players. And you've got a top 30 freshman on the team as well this year. You look at the coaching, maybe mismatch where Bruce Pearl he has more experience. He's probably a better coach than Jake Diebler is at this very point in time in life in college basketball. I struggle to paint a picture where Ohio State can win this game. And even keeping this close, I think that comes down to John Mobley Jr. hitting threes. I think that comes down to Michi Johnson having a good Michi game and not a bad Michi game. But I think Auburn's going to win this game. And I think, depending on that number, Auburn should be able to win this game by about 10 points or even more, potentially. The good thing is that they don't draw a lot of fouls. If Ohio State can stay out of foul trouble, you can keep this game a little bit tighter, I think, even toward the end. We'll see. But I just think Auburn is the best team in the nation. And I don't think it's a bad thing if Ohio State loses to Auburn. I don't think anyone expects it. Fans may get upset and disgruntled and impatient. That's fine. You weren't supposed to win this game. So, I don't know. We're really going to get mad about that. I think there's other things to focus on right now for Ohio State basketball than getting mad over a loss to Auburn. I wouldn't expect Ohio State to win this game, but this is a gauntlet. This is the hardest part of the season. You've got Pitt, and then you had the start of Big Ten play, and then you have Auburn, and then you get Valpo, and then you get Kentucky. And then it's Christmas time. So you're kind of done with it. And then the first part of the Big Ten schedule in January is really, really rough too. But this could maybe not make or break the season, the stretch, but it's really going to set the tone heading into Big Ten play. So we'll see what happens in this one. Of course, we'll be back to recap the game. We just might be going live. You're going to have to make sure that you are following on X to know if we'll be live on YouTube after the game. But until then, appreciate you listening to or watching today's show. Reminder, if you give the show a 5-star review on Spotify, you will have the opportunity to win a Raising Cane's gift card. Just DM me a screenshot of you giving the 5-star review, and you'll be entered into winning that gift card or one of the 2 gift cards. I can't give the same 2 gift cards to the same person. Anyways, Buckeyes, huge game against the Tigers. If Ohio State wins this game, Are we back in on the Buckeyes just being a Final Four team? I don't know. Maybe we should be. So we hope that Ohio State will win. That would be a shocking upset in my eyes if they did. We'll see what happens in this one. I'm going to shut up, though, before you shut me off. I appreciate you listening to today's show, and go Bucs.